Alrighty, let's start. So my session topic is how to train the dragon. I just love that movie, How to Train the Dragon. That's why. Um, let's start with who I am. Hi, my name is Suchi Garg. You can find me online on Twitter as Garg Suchi. You can find me on Drupal.org as Garg Suchi. Um, I am currently working with Accenture in Melbourne, Australia. I have the title of Application Development Manager. That's a big title, but basically, I do technical leadership in Drupal projects and technical architecture as well. And I'm also helping in training and hiring. Some more background about me. I have been working with Drupal since 2006. Yes, I am very old. I started as a developer, but during the journey, I have done quite a number of hats, like including right from developer and trainer. I've done some QA, some project management. I have been a tech architect, a tech lead, etc., etc. So pretty much done quite a lot of roles. I see that some people have already looked at my poll and they've already started voting. I would really like for people to, because I want to understand what kind of audience I have. Can you just look at the poll and can you just click on at least the first question? Have you been involved in hiring process for Drupal talent at all? While we go ahead. So a very quick agenda, why are we here? We are here because I'll be talking about why are we here, why is there a shortage, the basics, then the graduate program, and I will be talking about a simple model that worked for us. We do agree, we do accept that that's not a model that might work for everybody, but yes, that is a model, and I'm sharing just our experiences. And with the model that I will be showing, how does the organization actually gain? And then there'll be a conclusion of the whole thing. I will be handing the questions at the end of the session. So please feel free to add them in the Q&A, and I will be I'll be checking to them at the end. And basically, this is what I really miss when it comes to physical DrupalCons versus virtual DrupalCons. The whole interaction, because I would have loved to see people and their faces and gauge what is happening. But anyways, let's try to make the best of what we have. So number one, why are we here? So if we look at Drupal.org, the Drupal.org has a strength of more than 1.5 million users, and yes, those users will include a lot of users which are not active anymore, maybe spam bots, etc., etc. But having said that, there are more than 100,000 active users on Drupal.org, which basically means that these users have logged in on Drupal.org in the last a year or so. We have a huge number of sites powered by Drupal in the internet. As of February 2020, there were more than 500,000 live Drupal sites. So clearly there is no dearth of Drupal sites. There is no dearth of people working in Drupal. But then why, when I try to hire a good Drupal developer or a good Drupal talent, I almost never find them easily? I would like to stress on the word good here, because I think lack of a developer versus a lack of a good developer, these are two very different things. I would love to pause here for just a minute and see if people have had different experiences. Go on. I would like you to pop in some comments in the discussion chat if possible, and say, even if to say, yes, we have had those problems or those kinds of things. So why is finding Drupal talent so difficult? So let's see what happens when we start the process of hiring. Maybe we go ahead and put out an advertisement. We list on job boards like Indeed or Seek or Monster or LinkedIn or whatever. And we also try to activate our references, especially in a community like Drupal. I would think that references is a single best source of getting talent. So these are the few things that we do when we have to start the process of hiring. We do get a lot of applications. We do get a lot of interest, but something is always almost always missing, right? Um, we don't find enough suitable Drupal talent. We don't find site builders, we don't find module developers, we don't find theme developers. In fact, even project managers, that is also a difficult breed to find. Project managers having specific skills around Drupal projects. It does help on a project to have a project manager who has some technical Drupal skills, even if it is just, knowing the Drupal lingo. And why does that happen? That normally happens because when we are trying to look at the trying to look at the people who are showing an interest, we always try to look for Drupal superstars. We are not looking for a developer, we are looking for a Drupal superstar developer. But there is just a limited number of superstars, and there's just a limited number of excellent Drupal developers there. We don't want to hire the average or less than average fits. We don't want to hire people who don't exactly fit the jigsaw puzzle that we already have, um, because we don't like it. In my opinion, that is a bit entitled. We expect people to have all the skills that we want. We expect them to hit the ground running from day one. But is that actually realistic? Why do we have these expectations? Why do we think that the person I hire is the person that the day he or she, or they, I would say, the day they are on the project, they start being productive? Um, why do we have these expectations? And the reason why we have these expectations, because we um, as the people hiring the talent, we don't want to have to make any investments. We don't want to do that work. We don't want to spend enough time with the people we hire and make them suit to our requirements. Please note the use of the word investment here, because I will be using that quite a lot in the next 35-40 minutes or so. So my whole point here is that they might not, the people who are coming in touch with us, they might not have the specific skills, but most of them are committed to making great effort in the direction of making a great career of themselves. There are intelligent people in the world who really want to make a great career, and that is exactly what we should be looking for, the correct mindset as compared to the exact skill set that we need. What I'm trying to say here is that when we look for talent, we do tend to have a very myopic mindset. We are not looking at though that talent hiring from a long-term perspective. We are actually looking at from a very, very short-term perspective. Um, there is another basic thing that I would like to talk about here. So, as I said earlier, I'm an application development manager in Accenture. That's a very big title, but in short, as I said, my job description is pretty much being a Drupal architect, a Drupal tech lead. I do help in hiring, etc. So, which essentially means that, like, let's be very simplistic. I help make websites. So let's just look at this sentence. I help making websites. Is that the most valuable thing that I do? Is that the most making websites? Is that the most valuable thing for the Drupal ecosystem? I don't think that is. What is my company actually selling when it puts me on a Drupal project? Value is not the code. The code is open source. It's free, or at least most of it is. Not the custom codes, of course. What is of the immense value here is my expertise, my knowledge, my skill. So in the whole hiring ecosystem, I think it's the people that is the most value, and not the actual website building part of it. So it's the people like you and me which are the most value. This is a picture of the last physical DrupalCon, DrupalCon Amsterdam, and this was a priceless picture because these are the people. This is what is the most valuable thing. So what should be done? So there are different ways that organizations have been handling this problem. None of the, I won't say that one of those options is superior or inferior, but as I said, I would like to share what has worked for us in the not so recent past. And the base of our model has been teaching on the job. Um, Accenture does have a very good culture of teaching on the job, but let's start with some basics. So Accenture has a great graduate program. I have put down the link at the bottom here, which gives a link for the graduate programs. And basically, the steps of getting into that into that program is that you apply for it, your CV is reviewed, there is an HR touch point, there is a virtual assessment center because of COVID, it's a virtual assessment center, and you get an offer. So in this program, we actually look for work history, but it's not really essential to have a work history. It's a bit about you and your thought process that is a bit highly valued here. So what happens because Accenture has such a great graduate program? What happens is that we do have a huge pool, I would say, of extremely talented people available within the company that can be tapped. Okay, so let's start with, as I was saying, the model that actually worked for us. And before I go ahead, let's talk about the skills that we normally look out for. As we all know, there are three major skills that we are looking out for when we are in a Drupal project: a site builder, a front-end developer, and a back-end developer. As I mentioned earlier, there are some other skills also that are really desirable, like a project manager, etc. But let's try to focus on these three because these are the Drupal skills that we have been looking out for. The reason why I wanted to separate these three is because the mindset of all the three, or the way we are, the skill set of the three is quite different. So let's look at the first one, which is a Drupal site builder. So what is a Drupal site builder? What do you need? As a site builder, a Drupal site builder, you don't really need to have any coding experience. If you have a CMS background or CMS experience, awesome. If you don't have, that is even fine. So as I said, these are the skills that is needed. So based on these skills, who can be picked for these roles? The graduates that are hired for the Accenture graduate program, they are actually called analysts. So for this kind of a role, no specific skill set is needed. You basically pick up any smart analyst, and they should have an inclination to be learning new things. They should have that kind of attitude. And I think attitude is the most important thing here. And not only here, attitude is the most important thing in any kind of hiring result set, I would say. So as I said, we can pick, if we need a site builder, we can pick any smart analyst who has the attitude to learn new things, and also try to make sure that their future goals or what their aim is sort of on the same path as what we are trying to get them into. The next skill or the next kind of talent that we need is a Drupal front-end developer. And let's be very frank, Drupal front-end developer is a totally different breed from Drupal site builder. What are the basic skills needed? A basic theming experience would be very good. Yes, HTML, CSS, JS, jQuery, etc. These skills are very important. And if they are Drupal site builders, amazing, because having a Drupal site builder does help in understanding the whole theming architecture, the hierarchy, etc., etc. So who can be picked for this role? from the pool of analysts available, try to look for people who have some HTML, CSS, and JS and jQuery skills, jQuery's experience. And the people who have already done the Drupal site building experience, they are a good fit, provided again they have that inclination to get into front-end theming, and they have some experience with HTML, CSS, JS, etc. Then the third breed, I would say, is the Drupal backend developer. And this is, again, totally different from the front enders. Yes, we all talk about full stack, but let's accept that full stack is a unicorn. They are, yes, we have a lot of full stack developers, but they're not that easy to find. So it's better to develop these skill sets separately. So what are the requirements for a Drupal backend developer? The requirement is if they need to have some PHP experience and some OOPS experience, some kind of API MVC experience is always desirable. And if they have Symfony experience, nothing like that. That would be an awesome fit. So again, who can be picked for this role? Within that pool, try to look for people with that relevant skill set. Again, people in the role of site building can easily step into this role if they had an inclination, if this path actually matches their future path. And I keep on insisting on if they have the inclination and if their path matches their future path, because I think that is one really important aspect of this whole system. Okay, so once you have picked a person, you have talked to them, you feel that yes, they have the correct inclination, they are they sort of match the skill set. What next? What is the process? So we start them by giving a self-guided tutorial. Yes. So this is Drupal, what happens, some kind of basic tutorials that they can go through. Then we try to give them a practical assignment. And if we are already on a project, we try to get them the assignments related to the project rather than defining some abstract assignments. And it is this project part that I will be talking about in detail. So what is the process that we have followed? And this is essentially the model that we have followed in the past. Project team structure, make sure that the team has people in the team who already know the skill and the new people are already at it. So when I say I'm trying to put a new person and trying to develop them for a front-end skill, a Drupal front-end skill, it is a ratio of 2:1 normally works very well. So it is desirable that we have already 2 front-end developers who are pretty experienced, and then they can take that new developer, a new person under their wing. Peer programming is really important. I can't even insist on how important that part is, how important peer programming is here. So in the initial phases, the experienced developers, so the 2 experienced developers, they are responsible for project deliverables, but they keep on making sure that the new person is part of each and every discussion, is part of each and every code change, it goes through the code change, etc. So, and this thing happens for a specific initial duration. Typically 5 to 6 weeks is a good duration for the new person to get the flow of the project, understand what is happening, and also while the experienced people are working on their tasks, each and everything actually passes through the new person as well, so they understand what are the changes that are happening and why are these changes happening. I think the why of these changes is much more important. After this initial duration of 5 to 6 weeks, as I was saying, and 5 to 6 weeks is not a hard and fast rule. It depends a lot on the people, it depends a lot on the project, etc. But this is just a generic rule. So after the initially defined 5 to 6 weeks, the dynamics are flipped essentially. And now the newbie is much more responsible for delivering the task, and the experienced people are just trying to look over their shoulders. They're just trying to make sure that everything is happening as per the requirement. And after a few more additional time, maybe 2 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, depends entirely on the project, etc. The newbie is almost entirely responsible for the whole build. And the experienced people are essentially available only if the newbie is not able to do something, only if they need to troubleshoot, etc., etc. So they are essentially consulting. They move to a consulting position rather than, and when that happens, what is happening is that those two, you don't really need two experienced people. One of those experienced person does become available for other projects as well. One of the most important things that need to happen is that one senior architect, one senior team lead needs to remain a constant throughout this whole process, because we need to have one person with full and one role, or maybe two roles depending on the size of the project, who is part of the whole flow. And because they need to understand they are the ones who understand the strengths and the weaknesses of the new people, and they need to step in as and when needed, as and when people are need to decide, for example, do they actually need help, because newbies do have a tendency of not asking for help, for example, or asking for too much help. So those kinds of things need to be balanced, and that is basically managed by the one architect / team lead who is a constant in the project. So yes, this all sounds very good, but what about when the switch happens and when the new person starts actually delivering code? How do we maintain the quality control? And the quality control maintenance is basically following the processes. I think if the processes are written well and they are followed well, then quality control can be easily maintained. And what are the two main reasons? What are the two main ways in which quality can be controlled? I would say the two most important ones are, number one, that code reviews. So make sure that each and every code change that happens is actually reviewed by somebody who knows their stuff. And Git flow, following Git flow, so feature branches. So basically what happens is that newbies are developing totally in a feature branch, and those branches are not merged into the brain branch without the thorough code review and without testing that branch totally. So there is a smaller change of them breaking anything. And even if something does break, let's face it, even the most experienced devs can break anything. So we have to keep an open mind during this whole process. And I would like to reiterate why code reviews are so important, because so much can be learned just by going through the code review comments, and just by going through the code changes that happen. So much can actually be learned. So if the code reviews are done well, and if the code reviews are documented well as well. When I say the code reviews are documented well, it is a very good practice to, when there is a good code, to comment on the code and say that I like this part because you have actually, take for example, I like this part of the code because you have actually extracted the function and made it more modular. I like this part because you're actually going ahead and adding unit tests which need to happen. I like this part because functional testing is being taken care of. And in the negative cases, you have to go ahead and change this part because this. So code reviews need to be really thorough, and they need to be really vocal as well, I would say. Some do's. It is better to have a co-located team. Yeah, I know. 2020 has certainly taught us that everything can be done remotely. And I myself, I'm a great supporter of remote working. But having said that, there are some things which really work better when in person. It's all about the synergies. And I think one of the things that does work better in person is a scenario like this. Um, and and I think one of the main reasons is there is so much you learn just by hearing a person converse with maybe anybody else. It is so much easier to just tap a person and get a feel out of what is happening, what are they doing, or the body language does signify so much. So in person, a co-located team is always preferable. If it is not possible because of 2020, then of course remote is possible. I am in no way saying that remote option is not possible. The second most important thing is that when you're picking people from the pool you have, if you have a person who has a better skill set match, but their attitude, they're not self-driven, they don't seem responsible, versus a person who has a smaller skill set match, but they are really go-getters, they're really, really responsible, and they're self-driven. I would always prefer the second lot, because skills can be taught. It is these softer things, being responsible for what you're doing, being there, stepping up. These are the things that are more difficult to teach. So it is really important that we pick the people who are responsible and self-driven. The third thing that I have pointed out here is transparency with the client. It is very, very important to make sure that client knows about this whole process. They know about the fact that new people are in the project, and we are using the project as a learning playground for them. Um, and that actually comes to the next topic that I'm saying here, the next thing that I have on my slide, and that is the project financials. Um, because we are putting a person on training on the project, and because that person is not productive right from day one, I think it is the ethical thing to do that during the first few weeks till the person is on the back end. The newbie should be free for the client. The cost of that person, so for example, Accenture has a concept of delivery centers. So the cost of the person can be borne by the delivery center, or it can be borne by the project, or it can be borne by the organization, whatever. But they should be free to the clients. And I think that does help with the transparency with the client, when we are saying to them very clearly that the first 6 weeks we will not be charging for this person. This person will be working on the project, but will not be charging for them. And in the later stages, we can work out a mutually acceptable terms. Of course, we cannot be charging what we are charging for the most experienced people. So having that kind of transparency and having that kind of financial understanding is also really, really important. Make sure that the project has experience in an architect, lead for oversight, and this is exactly what I mentioned in my earlier slide as well. It is very important to have that one or two people who are the constant through the project while the actual delivery team is changing, because they are the people who have the full oversight, the full umbrella picture of the project. And the last one, always combine this with appropriate training resources. And I mean, you cannot leave the new person just, okay, fend it for yourself. No, you have to make sure that the people are thoroughly and properly supported, and having appropriate training sources is really important. And this is also very important to make sure that the project remains on track. So when something like that happens, it is experienced developers can easily roll off, and they can easily add value to some other projects. So there are some more do's, but these are more around the softer do's, and these are the softer requirements to make this kind of a model a success. Willingness of the team to teach, and I'm not talking only about the experienced people that they should be willing to teach. Even we learn every day from a person who has just joined a project. They have their own perspective, they have their own insights. So everybody should be in that teaching mode always. And similarly, on the flip side, everybody should be in that learning mode always. That kind of a culture needs to happen in the project. um, Getting my work done versus helping you learn, these are two different things. These are the two different things that keep on fighting with each other as well. That I need to get my work done, but I need to help you with learning as well. So there has to be a balance. We understand that getting my work done is the bread and butter of the project. We understand that that is required, but helping you learn is also a long-term gain. So there needs to be a balance. And one good way of doing that is to make sure that appropriate time is approved and time requirement is catered to in the project for the helping you learn part as well. That you have to make teaching and learning a priority. You cannot make teaching cannot happen as a side note. It has to be a priority. The third thing is that is very important is empathy. Not everyone has the same pace. Not everyone has the same circumstances. Not everyone has the same willingness, and not So empathy is something that is not required only for this model to succeed. Empathy is something that I would say is required for anything and everywhere in the world. So that's why it made its place here in this slide as well. The next one is again investment in terms of time. This is sort of related to what I just discussed. This whole process is time intensive, but we cannot compare it with hiring the correct person with the exact skill set. We cannot really compare it because again, that is a very myopic view, and this is a long-term investment in terms of time which is equal to money in the ecosystem. Encouragement. Everybody needs encouragement. Just a simple sentence. You did a great job. That sentence does work magic. So make sure that you are passing out encouragement to the team. And I think one of the most important things for this kind of a model to succeed is the culture. This whole culture of teaching needs to be an organizational culture. Just one person doing it will never be successful. They may be successful as a one-off, but they cannot be sustainable. The formula to be sustainable, this needs to have a buy-in from the higher level. This needs to be a more organizational thing rather than just a few people trying to get it working. So once something like this happens, once you have something like this, what is the gain? What is actually what is the organization gaining? So in an organization, number one, I would say, is retention and loyalty. Any organization which promotes learning on the job, I have noticed that generally retention is much higher. And again, when it comes to loyalty, even the ones that they leave. So it's not, when I say loyalty, I don't mean that people won't leave. People will always leave. You cannot expect people to always be there. So they will always leave. So it's not about they will never leave. It's about the relationships, that they will still remain loyal. They will still remember that this is the organization that helped me learn. And that is such an important thing. The next thing is teamwork. A team which is built this way, they tend to communicate much better. They are stronger, harmonious teams. The next part is the developers with other skill sets, because the team members started off as not as the Drupal devs or the Drupal talent. They have been picked from a pool which they already had some skill sets. So that is why the team does get developers with other skill sets. Of course, culture of training. I have been emphasizing on that quite a lot. I don't have to say that again and again. Um, but what happens is that because you have that culture of training, you automatically start educating, for example, the client as well. And we all know how important educating a client is. And if we are able to educate the client well, they tend to make knowledgeable decisions, and that ultimately leads to excellent client relations as well. And the last but not the least, applicant flow through the word of mouth marketing. So let's be very frank. As a Drupal developer, if I have to choose between, I'll give you my example. When I moved to Australia about 3.5 years back, I was in Delhi. One evening, I just applied to two companies, and I got an offer letter from both of them. And the offer letter from both of them was pretty much the same. Both were offering me remote work, etc., etc., etc. They were pretty much identical. And because I was sitting in Delhi, I had no idea about the Australian companies. I was not able to make a decision as to which one should I pick up. So I started talking to my friends who were in Australia and got to know about the culture of both the organizations. One of them had that kind of a culture, the other one did not, and that is why I picked one. And I can probably say that I made the right choice at that time. So this word of mouth thing, especially in a community like Drupal, is so very important, I would say. So in conclusion, we don't have a lot of time because I would like to save some time for Q&A as well. In conclusion, as I was saying earlier, this is not the only way. This is not the only model that people have. This is not the only thing that organizations follow. There are many more other things to do. So, for example, hire an experienced talent, get people on dedicated training with a specific training ladder for each skill set. Get them to testing. If you put people on testing, that is such a good way for them to learn. Get them on documentation or client training material. Get them on writing automated tests. Writing a Behar test does not need any coding, but if somebody writes a Behar test, they do understand Drupal very well. And put them on first level support, for example. That way they can, if somebody approaches them with a problem, they can reproduce it and they can triage it. And that is a very good step towards learning these things. I have also gone through and putting some training resources. I do like, for example, Drupalize Me, Drupal Easy, Drupal Builder Module. All of them are really excellent training resources. All right, so thank you. Questions? I can see one question that has come through. Can you share some examples of tasks you always give to your newbie talents to help them progress faster? Thanks, Antonia. So again, it depends on which role I'm talking about. So for example, if it's a site builder, and if they're total newbies, they need to understand the concept of content types, for example. And because that is such a unique thing about Drupal, that is so important for them to understand the content types, the fields, etc. So one of the tasks, for example, when I talk to these kinds of people is that, okay, we have to create a page, an event kind of a page. Look at the page, because designs are normally the first things that come to you. Look at the design and now try to define a content type of it. Try to break it down into the fields and what are the types of fields, etc. So that is the kind of things I start off with. But then we start progressing. Maybe get them to make a view, maybe get them to create a blog, etc. Okay, so Matthew says we also have trained talent and we work with Drupal Easy. Okay, this was not a question, Matthew, but thank you. All right, do we have any more questions? I don't see any more questions coming in through, so okay. There are a couple now. Where would you recommend to start if somebody like to evolve from site builder to front end developer? That is a tricky one, but I think for a front end developer, as I said, um, being a site builder does help, but they need to have the basics of front end developer. They have to learn that. So HTML, CSS, JS, and jQuery. They have to learn that, and along with that, they have to understand the intricacies of Drupal, because that's what differentiates a generic front-end developer from a Drupal front-end developer. So if you have a site builder, if you are a site builder and you want to go to the front-end developer path, try to get the basics HTML, CSS, JS. Try to get those skills, and then try to understand the different things within Drupal, like hierarchy, etc. And then that is the way you can go forward. Okay, Prakhar says, you mentioned about teamwork. How do you look at a project that consists of a team having experienced members to freshers? How will that part be toned down into a functional product as an end result? I'm not sure if I'm understanding the question correctly, but from my understanding, what you're asking is that because you have an experienced member versus a fresher, the team dynamics may be a bit off. And I think that is something that can be managed by the culture. When you have a culture of training, and when you have a culture of empathy, I don't think those things actually matter, how experienced you are or how fresher you are. The experienced person can also always learn from the fresher, and of course the fresher is always learning from the experienced person. I hope I understood your question correctly. And then there was not a question, but a hi from Kunath Rahul. Hello, Kunath, how are you? All right, I think that's all we have. Thanks a lot, everybody. Hope you liked the session. And as you can see, I'm Garg Suchi on Twitter, and I'm Garg Suchi on Drupal.org. Feel free to ping me if you have any other questions or if you want to discuss anything further. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.